Hey everybody, let's talk Portuguese. So now that you've got your milk sorted out in your shopping cart, you're gonna need some other stuff from the grocery store. Milk's creamier cousin, known as cream in English, is known as nata in Portugal, but creme de leite in Brazil. Once you pass the produce section, don't get confused by a lot of the things that you see. Some fruits and vegetables are very different in Brazil and Portugal, none more so than lemons and limes. In Portugal, they're very straightforward. The yellow fruit is always a limão, and the green fruits are always limas. But in Brazil, things get complicated because many different types of limão would be known as limas in Portugal, and Portugal's humble limão would be called a limão siciliano. What we know as a lime in English in Brazil could be called a limão galego, a limão Tahiti, or simply a lima. It all depends on what kind of citrus you're after. Once you've gotten enough limões to make a jelly, in Portugal you'd be making a doce de limão. But a doce de limão in Brazil would refer to anything sweet with a lemon flavor. Instead, in Brazil, it would be a geleia de limão, which is all not to be confused with marmelada, which is the thick jam made from the marmelo, which is also what gave us in English the word marmalade. If you wanted to grow a marmelo of your own, in general, you would be growing a marmeleiro. But in Brazil, they have another way of referring to plants that bear fruit, which is to say a pé de marmelo, or pé de alguma coisa, which is not used in Portugal. Now, you might be the kind of shopper that's concerned with the origin of your produce, and in that case, you might be looking for organic produce. In Brazil, this is simple enough because they use a word similar to English. You would be looking for produtos orgânicos. But in Portugal, they followed the French model, and you'd be looking for produtos biológicos. Moving on to vegetables, green beans are translated literally in Portugal known as feijão verde, but in Brazil they'd be called vagem. Similarly, a zucchini or a courgette in Portugal is called a courgette, but in Brazil would be known as a little squash or an abobrinha. To cook all of these things, you might want some cooking oil, and if you're using olive oil, in Portugal you'd be buying azeite, never azeite de oliva, which is kind of like saying olive oil, but is also a term commonly used in Brazil, where azeite can be used synonymously with the word óleo. If you're in the mood for sanduíche, in Portugal you might also be asking for uma sanduíche, which may or may not come on a baguette or French bread, which in Portugal and the south of Brazil can be called a cassette, but in the rest of Brazil is a slang term. Instead, they would be ordering their sandwich on a pão francês. Even the humble pasta, which is not to be confused with pasta, has its differences as well. In general, in Portugal, it's referred to as massa, but in Brazil, it's often referred to as types of macarrão, which in and of itself, in Portugal, is a type of massa. Spaghetti in Portugal has an R that doesn't exist in Portugal, so you have sparguete versus spaghetti. And that's all I've got for these mouth-watering differences between European and Brazilian Portuguese. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you might think about giving it a like and subscribing to my channel. I've got a bunch more of these kind of videos, and you can find them all on a playlist on my channel or in the eye above, and I will see you next time.